I never get them. But I did get the email, so I'm aware.
Still think that board members should get them. I've asked.
Sure. You know what, I don't, well, I guess you know what, maybe I didn't want to be on it because I didn't want to get the snow
In the
calls.
middle of the night. I call to order the special meeting of the River Falls Board of Education. This meeting has been properly notified. Do we have any visitors or delegations who would like to address the board regarding an issue that is not on the agenda? All right, then we are going to move on to informational items. And the first one is a presentation from the music department. And I see that you're right here, so.
Here we are.
Yes, so please.
All right. Would you like to stay here or should we move anywhere specific?
We need to come to a mic.
If you're here, then the
Closer
other
here to the
people.
mic.
Yep.
Okay, then.
And we all know who you are, but there are these people who are watching us via YouTube who don't know who you are, so maybe you could introduce yourselves just for people who are watching. even though you
Sure,
know.
sure. My name is Joe Coughlin. I teach middle school and high school band.
I'm Brian Jacob. I am the high school band director.
Sarah Kwan, middle school and high school choir, and Carrie Modi, high school choir.
All right, so thank you very much for this opportunity to come tell you about our music program, how the current situation is kind of affecting our classes. We would first like to express our gratitude to our administration and to Mr. Benson. They've been in a bunch of recent conversations with us about this. We know colleagues in other districts who maybe are less fortunate to have attention to their classes, and we really appreciate that. Also, in some recent discussions, we also found that we actually differ with Mr. Benson in how far our students should be separated in the classes. And it was actually him that recognized this and invited us to continue the discussion. So we really appreciated that. It really made us feel like part of a team. And so we can't say how much we appreciate the invitation to come and talk to you and just at least tell you about what's going on. So what we'd like you to consider is that we believe it's very possible for us to play instruments and sing in our rehearsals at a closer distance than we currently are, without adding significant risk to the students in our music classrooms. based on several scientific studies that are directly correlated to our area. So why do we believe there's not significant heightened risk? So we've got a few things here. The up behind you, a few too. These are some of the organizations, the National Federation of State High School Associations, the College Band Directors Association, and over 125 performing arts organizations commissioned an international aerosol study. The preliminary findings were reported on July 13th, and then a secondary release of the findings on August 6th. The study was, from what we can find, the most directly relevant scientific data to our area. It's testing exactly what we do in our classes. Lead researchers on this were Dr. Shelley Miller from the University of Colorado, and I don't know how to say her last name. Could use a vowel in there somewhere. But the doctor from the University of Maryland, and they had their respective research teams in Boulder and in University of Maryland. So, and then they have this disclaimer. We didn't want to come in and just use the stuff that we thought was relevant, but they do put the preliminary results disclaimer. This was after some preliminary testings. Normally they say they don't release data until it's been peer reviewed. Okay, but they put this out because of some time constraints of what was happening with schools. And then on the last bullet, you can see that they didn't use live virus for, obviously for safety reasons. But the study was designed to identify performing arts activities that generate respiratory aerosols, including volume, direction, and density, so on and so forth. So that's kind of about the study. This is one of the charts that they use within their study. This is the infection risk using the Wells-Riley equation. The boxes here are 4 meters, 4.5 meters, or approximately 12 feet by 13.5 feet. So you'll notice that within 30 minutes of singing without a mask, that's the top 3 boxes. Within the 30-minute mark, that's the middle box on top. Singing without a mask, the area of risk has not exceeded 6 feet in any direction. It does, however, expand well beyond that area after an hour of time. But then in the bottom row, you can see that when masked, the risk area looks to stay, reasonably even within a 1 to 2 foot area for over an hour. Okay, so that's a little different maybe than some people would expect. After all was said and done, here's an infographic of the recommendations of the study. After measuring all of the different types of wind instruments as well as singing, these are the recommended guidelines for playing and singing from this coalition. They say mask everything, mask the player, mask the instrument, mask the singers, and the teachers, of course. The distance that they recommend is 6 feet distance with masks on. And as far as timing goes, they recommend indoors, because we're in Wisconsin now, so really that's the only pertinent information to us at this point. Indoors, playing instrument for 30 minutes at a maximum, and then a minimum of 1 air exchange between classes. They do state in there that more is better, more air exchange is better. And Joe Haselman has said that our air exchange is about at the 15-minute mark, about 4 per hour. Materials do matter, 2 layers of dense fabric, the proper hygiene. You can't have spit all around the band room and things like that. We have some things to account for, which we have things in place. And then the airflow, of course, the good ventilation. So I'd like to talk quickly about where we're at right now in our classrooms. All 6 through 12 choirs were just given the go-ahead this past week to sing indoors with masks on, 13 feet apart. Up until that point, they had been restricted to humming with masks on. 6th and 7th grade choirs still can't sing due to the space constraints of 13-foot policy, regardless. The 7th and 8th grade middle school band students have been playing for about 6 weeks at 13 feet between players. And the high school bands were just allowed to play indoors at 13 feet this past week. Before we were doing our best to play outside, weather permitting, or just doing some music related activities. And then their 6th grade band and choir has not performed any music in school yet. Both groups are the largest groups of the school. They're in school full time, of course, for the 6th grade. And they also take place where there's only 1 staff member at that time available. We have asked where the number 13 comes from. And when talking about a safe distance for music, to our knowledge, it's a number that was thought of as just a good, safe number. Not necessarily published in data or tests, nor backed by the expertise of area and music, but just a a safe number. And we realize with that being said that these are tough times. We certainly understand the difficulty of the people who have to make those decisions. The school has had success because there's been caution and people have taken the situation seriously. We don't want to deny that. And we think that we can still be cautious, but also have more success in providing experiences for music students. We've listened to this board discuss the importance of the athletics and providing experiences to our athletes, and we're eager for you to discuss the importance of providing music students with the same opportunities in their activity. Just with any activity, there are students who rely on music to provide for their creativity, their social connections, and their emotional well-beings. Just the other day, I received a note from a high school kid saying, thanks so much to you and for the music teachers for continuing to help us play our instruments in class. It meant a lot to him, and he was pretty disappointed when they couldn't play. There are some pretty big implications, especially at the middle school, of keeping the 13-foot distance. And we would like to have it considered soon, sometime very soon, that we can move to something between the recommended 6 feet of the aerosol study and the 13 feet of Pierce County recommendations. At 13 feet, the 6th grade band and choir still do not fit in a facility. 6th grade choir will continue not to be able to sing unless sections are split and more staffing is given, or, and as for band, there's been some discussion about maybe getting another person in there that would split into thirds. That would mean they'd play about 7 times per quarter, and then about 15 classes a quarter, they'd have a non-music staff just kind of watching a study hall for them, or maybe doing online music activity. You know, as you can imagine, the 6th grade year is the formative year with young musicians. They get their first experiences in band and choir. We're having a fair amount of drop requests, frustrated students who simply express, I want to sing or I want to play. And it's not just 6th grade, of course, that this is happening in. At 13 feet, there's only one section of 7th grade choir that cannot fit into the auditorium, but it's pretty difficult to tell the other 3 sections that they can sing and then the one that they can't. Because of their unfortunate placement within, you know, their cohort. 8th grade choir would fit in at 13 feet, and 8th grade band will not fit in the band room at 13 feet. Currently, it's broken up into some smaller groups to provide for the 13 feet. Those are just the cohorts, the halves of bands and the halves of choirs, by the way. And at the high school, it's a bit more manageable, as band cohorts and choir cohorts would fit in the auditorium at that distance, but neither would fit in their respective classrooms at that distance. So the choir the auditorium would need to be shared on an every other day basis in order to have rehearsals of our cohorts. So a couple things to consider surrounding this topic. Any of the 6th through 12th grade musicians when isolated at 13 feet in small groups begin to have feelings of insecurity. Our strongest performers may not be bothered by this, but it's the kids who struggle but love to participate that find themselves uncomfortable in retreating. You can imagine how we'd all feel if I asked us all to spread out to 13 feet and we're all going to sing happy birthday together. And you were sitting 13 feet from anybody else and everybody else could hear you, right? And the live streaming alone would make us intimidated. Pierce County, some other stuff. Pierce County has referenced a Washington choir in March that was kind of a super spreader type event that you may have heard about. And we think it kind of gave music a bad name, really. But some further details of the event that have come out help to inform us that the group sang for about 2.5 hours without masks on, using several different setups. They sat about 6 to 12 inches apart. They had snacks available, and they stacked chairs in a social time afterwards. It's just not a relevant situation to what we're asking, I guess I would say. You know, we know better now, and that was March. We've learned a lot. More recently here, last week, a research brief of a new study came out. This is a new thing as of just last week by the University of Minnesota College of Science and Engineering, stating that wind instruments typically do not spread aerosols further than a foot. The first phase of study, the researchers categorized 10 different instruments. Tuba actually produces fewer aerosols than breathing. Bassoon, piccolo, flute, bass, clarinet, and French horn produce concentrations in the normal range of breathing. The clarinet produced concentrations in the range of speaking. Bass, trombone, and oboe produced concentrations just above the range of speaking, and the trumpet produced higher numbers of aerosol than speaking. So as a woodwind player, I must say this finally gives us a reason to get rid of all the trumpet players. So and to promote about 300 new tuba players, right? Because it's really safe. So, but joking aside, these levels were without any mitigation strategies, and we already have several strategies in place. If wind instruments are truly measurably comparable to breathing and speaking, don't kids sit in every other class in school and breathe and speak, and they're much closer than 13 feet and probably much closer than 6 feet? Even trumpet, the highest measured, doesn't spray air as it plays. I think people have this thought in their head that there's stuff protruding from the bell of an instrument when it plays. So this morning, I have a video on my phone, but I decided I wouldn't try to embed it here. But I have a video on my phone, but I held a Kleenex in front of Mike Fuller, the middle school band director, playing his trumpet. And the Kleenex doesn't waver. It just hangs limp in front of a trumpet. And he's a mighty trumpet player. I mean, he's got a lot of force. He played quite loud. And the Kleenex doesn't move. So it's not that we're projecting air, breathable air. That's not the way it works going through all the tubes. In the second phase of the U of M, the team used probes to measure how far the aerosols traveled from each instrument. It's only 10 centimeters, about 4 inches away from the instrument, that aerosol concentration was less than 10% that it was at the bell. And no instruments showed an appreciable influence of flow beyond a foot. So, with all of that being said, we have the opportunity to be significantly more effective in our classes inside the range of 13 feet between players, but we don't need to be as close as 6 feet. We've laid out the distances in our classrooms between players that we feel would work well within our classes. Because of the spaces and the numbers and the sizes of our cohorts, each class is slightly different, but all are 8 feet of separation or more. I could go through them individually. You're probably bored of listening to me talk right now, but I can assure you that they range anywhere from 8 feet to the 11 and 12 foot range to fit everything where we would need to be a lot more effective in our teaching. Some of the reason is this allows, say for instance, like it uses the band cohorts to use the band room and opens the auditorium for the choir, and so on and so forth. It allows us to use one effective space in our classrooms and one effective place in the auditorium. So these measurements give us the flexibility in our course, I just said that, giving a more authentic rehearsal experience to our students and more along the lines of what they would hope to get out of our classrooms. At the middle school, it would allow 6th grade to begin making music, and it would allow students in the middle school ensembles to have more confidence while playing and singing within their cohorts. And according to the studies directly correlating to our area, without sacrificing in terms of risk. So also in the board meetings concerning other activities, it's been important to discuss what parents might think. We did survey parents last week in the 6 through 12 music students in River Falls concerning their comfort levels with distancing in the music classrooms. We sent an email giving links, information, linking the information that I've talked about with you, and as much information as possible. And we had 271 responses representing 357 music students, as some households have multiple students in their household. We know this is well, here, I'll show you what those are quickly. So this is students in band. Okay, these were only band students. The green signifies people who are comfortable, parents with their band members playing at the 6 foot separation, about 63%. The orange is comfortable at an 8 to 9 foot. Red is comfortable at 13 feet, and the blue is prefer not playing at all. The black numbers are the actual numbers of students that those are representing, or at least the number of families, I should say, because some have multiple in one family. So you can see the numbers there. In choir, they're similar. Some of the smaller categories differ a little bit in numbers. Okay, in both over half are comfortable with 6 feet, and in both approximately 75% are comfortable with 8 to 9 feet or closer. And then the last one is another concerning one that we have. We asked if music classes continue kind of as they've been for the first 8 weeks. How likely is your student wanting to stay in music? And about half of the students say, no problem, we're going to stay in no matter what. Another quarter of them say they're likely to stay in music. The concerning thing is that 25% of them are 50-50 or worse. that they may not stay in music after this experience if this continues. So we're worried about that. You know, that's a pretty significant number saying that they're just not getting what they need out of our program. And understandably, it's a different experience right now. So we know it's a tough time. We know it's a tough time to be making decisions about the activities in school as cases continue to rise in our communities. But it has not been very long since we had cases spring up in other activities that are going on, and they were quickly recommended to continue. We hope the same consideration will be given for all school activities, including band and choir. We have several of our music staff here tonight. If you'd like to ask us any questions pertaining to this, and we do sincerely thank you for your time and all of your efforts to keep our school providing for students in many different ways. So thank you. Any questions that we can answer for you before we sit down?
I don't really have a question. I just want to make a comment that you've made it clear there's a whole new dimension now to music education. And I just so appreciate how you approach this. I mean, the data you showed, it's very scientific. My alma mater is University of Colorado. I can really identify with that. That was just for my personal part. And I totally agree. You know, music is so important to kids. It's important to brain development, community development, you know, self-esteem, skill building, all of these things. So I really appreciate how you approach this, and I support you guys getting to do that in the safest way you can, based on what you're recommending.
Bob and then Alan.
Joe, thanks for your presentation. I concur with what Mike is saying. I think we should give our music students the same opportunities we're giving our student athletes for the reasons you stated here and the reasons we've heard about for athletes in previous meetings. And at the 8 foot seems a reasonable number for me. One thing, it was like a second or third slide, the recommendation was a medical grade mask. You know, this wouldn't fly probably, huh? So
Yeah.
you're thinking N95s?
Well, you know, the interesting thing is that, so when this stuff came out, it was
actually
in late summer,
Oh, okay.
and then in August.
It was like the second or third slide.
This one?
Yeah.
Right, okay. So they used actually like, for the quality testing,
Yeah.
they didn't do a whole bunch of different masks because
Sure.
it would have opened Pandora's box into what
Sure.
materials work and what materials don't work. So in a lot of in the study, they said, we're going to use this. So it's a standard so that we know exactly everybody knows what we're doing.
Sure.
And it can be, you know, it's like just a standard, I guess, is what I could say. So yeah, it's, as far as I know, like further stuff that's come out generally says like the 2 layers is effective. That's where we kind of refer to everything else that's come out about masks since then. The masks that we have, the boosters actually sold 250, 300 masks for us. And we made sure that the fabric, you can't see light. We started studying the mask recommendations that are a little more current. So using material that number one is you can't see light through. It's double fabric. And it's a little heavy duty.
Yeah. Let me ask
So,
you a silly follow-up question, but the horn is placed over the mask, correct? Or
Well,
no?
it's
Or
not
under?
silly at all because we had to figure it out. And this
Yeah.
is, again, since
I don't know how-
so the other thing is what they did with this study is they actually took one of these masks and they just cut a straight
Okay.
slit across here.
Yeah.
But it actually, in our opinion, and kind of on band directors forums and things like
Yeah.
that, I feel like a little bit of an advancement in that has been made because that actually leaves a bit of an opening when
Oh.
the person plays. You know,
Oh.
it kind of hangs open when you put and part of the problem with like middle school kids is they don't have a super tight embouchure. You know,
Yeah.
air does escape around the corners of the mouth.
Yeah.
So there's been more advancement in that, I guess I could say.
Yeah.
These masks they're overlapped. So you actually have to get into and slide one flap over with the mouthpiece and get under the other one. And so it really closes up
Sure.
around
Okay.
the mouthpiece. So it looks funny because the horn's sticking out of the mask, but it's kind of around. But it actually, I think, is better than just cutting a straight hole in a surgical mask and letting it kind of hang open while they play.
Yeah. Okay.
So we hope it's kind of one better.
Sure.
And then choir, actually,
Oh, yeah.
each one is wearing,
I'm wearing one of the coral masks. Ours have 3 layers across here, as well as some boning, just to keep the mask away from the lips, so you can do the diction that's necessary. But here again, having more layers at the front. We provide them to the kids and wash them daily and make sure that they get back, so that
Sure.
they're up for the next classes.
And there's one other, I mean, there's still mitigation strategies that we can do. It was brought up in one of our meetings that someone, it was posted one time that maybe the bell covers, actually, that's a hard word. The bell covers could have a filter, like one of the filter pieces cut out and sewn into it. So there's still maybe some improvements to be made, but
our kids are currently playing with bell covers on.
Oh, good.
2-ply bell covers that we ask families to provide, and then we had a bunch of families go out and, I'm making a trumpet one, I'm gonna make 6 trumpet ones just in case somebody else doesn't have one.
Sure.
In fact, I made a couple and they still work. It's kind of amazing, but, so they're all masked, over their face as well as their instruments, they're all masked as well right now.
Okay.
So.
Ellen?
I echo kind of the direction we're going, and I really want to thank you for doing this. But I want to take it another step, because I know we've done this for athletics, extracurricular activities, but to me, music is more than an extracurricular activity. In fact, it's an extracurricular activity, secondary. First and foremost, it's an academic subject that we study in the classroom. And in fact, my guess is you guys are already using just what you've been explaining to us in the classroom to talk about how air moves and all those kinds of things in relation to music, right? I mean, sure that you've been discussing that science. So this is not only an extracurricular thing, but most importantly to me, this is an academic subject that we've got to figure out how we teach this academic subject in an effective way. Seems to me like you've come to some good conclusions, as Mike says, based on some research. A couple of things I'm thinking about. One is, we do this based on these recommendations, not because we want to play and sing. It's because we think that it's safe for the kids to play and sing, right? And in addition to that, because the kids are less likely to be infected than the teachers, okay? So that it's safe for the teachers that you're up in front, not just that you're brave souls and willing to stand in front of them to do this, but you've got some confidence in your mind that this is safe for you as well. And I think your presentation is telling me that you've got some confidence from that too, right? And then, so we use trial and error. So what's the distance, 13 or 6 or whatever, do we start moving down? The problem with trial and error is, in this, do we go until somebody gets sick and dies? Oops, now let's go back up to 8, okay? So at a certain point, we just got to be comfortable with it. I like the fact that you've based a little bit on best practices and national groups. And I'm assuming, because I know you're all 4 very connected with other band people in the region and nationally. What are they doing? How does this inform us? So I like this. I thank you for it. But I want to raise those 2 points. One is about health, but more importantly, the one that this is an academic subject. We got to figure out a way to support this, just as we have every other academic subject we've got out there right now. So.
I have a couple things here. And I want to echo what everybody else is saying, but given us a really good presentation with important things to think about. I think that all of you know that I have a history of being really dedicated to the music department. But I'm going to ask you some questions about the study, because if you're asking us to base our decision on the research that you presented, I have some questions. The first thing would be, the researchers that you identified in Colorado, what are their disciplines? What are their credentials? Do they come from the music department, or do they come from an engineering department? Where do they come from? Do you know?
I don't know if it was listed on there. Let me go back to it.
So you might not know now, but I think that would be a really good question for
Yep.
us to ask, is where they're getting that. I also read the article about the research that the University of Minnesota is doing, and those are engineering students who are working on this aerosol question. And if I'm recalling it correctly, one of the issues that they weren't anticipating was the rising of the hot air.
Yep.
And so that rises up above people and impacts where the airflow goes. That's all I remember. I don't remember exactly what they were saying in terms of then how to mitigate that or what the implications would be. But before we would make any plans about expanding performance, I would think that we would need to have a sense of what all of that is for our kids. The other thing is on the bell cover, I'm really glad that you're doing that. I've made a few of those too. And on the study, they talked about one
Environmental engineer.
filter did a good job, 2 did an even better job, 3 did an even better job than that, but 3 made it really difficult to play. You could still play your instrument with 1 or maybe 2, 3 was going to be a problem. I remember thinking there wasn't a gigantic difference between 2 and 3, but that would be something to consider as well. And then the last thing that I would like some more information about is, I'm not a scientist, but my understanding is that singing is actually more problematic in terms of aerosols than instrument playing. Am I right on that or not? I thought that there was a difference in terms of where aerosols go when it's an individual voice that's projecting.
You know, I
She's a
haven't
mechanical
heard a
engineer.
study yet about
Second one's mechanical engineer.
non-professional, or everyone has been a professional singer. There hasn't been a lot with younger singers creating the aerosols. And yet, it's hard for me to believe that younger people singing at little amounts of time make nearly the amount as a college choir is.
I would imagine that would be.
Or a
true.
professional opera singer.
Or a professional, yeah.
Also, in this study, there is some graphs where they chart out singing and measure the aerosols produced. And then singing with a mask is, you'll notice, is right about where the same level of sitting and breathing is. Without, yeah.
I will tell you, I am concerned about the discrepancy between, we have supported as a board, playing football, playing volleyball, and so forth. And we seem to be more conservative about this, and so I do have a question about that. I am wondering too about the comparison of athletic, or not athletic, academic classes. So what are we doing in Fayette? What are we allowing in Fayette? Does anybody know? And how does that compare?
Outdoors a lot.
Masks and what's the distance?
I don't know what the distance is.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't speak on that.
Yeah.
We don't know that.
I just know that they were walking outside today.
I'm just saying that might be a point of comparison. too for us.
Well, and honestly, there's other activities in the school that we're looking at as well. I mean, we've got some fabulous mock trial students and fabulous forensics kids and things like that maybe some things need to be looked at, but.
Stacy.
Yeah, to answer your question,
Bob has been doing
Shelley
some-
Miller is a mechanical engineer specializing in interior environmental control, climate control, and the second individual is a mechanical engineer as well. I'm, specializing in microclimate.
That's
I
great.
think we've got some people with credentials there.
Google is a wonderful thing.
Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing?
Fast, you know?
Yeah. So I see the
Can
quality.
I just ask you to
Yes.
clarify one thing? In most of the classes, you have enough room to separate the kids out to the recommended 13 feet, right? It's only one class that's
No.
a little bit tight?
No, in most classes, 13 feet actually doesn't work.
Okay,
That's-
so what is the distance that does
Distances?
work,
Sure.
that you
Um,
figured out?
There's one sixth grade section that would be 8 feet between players with 9 feet between trombone players. The other sixth grade bands could function at 10 feet. Seventh grade band could still function at 13 feet. The seventh grade choir can use the auditorium and maintain just about a 9-foot separation. The eighth grade band can function in the band room with 9-foot separation between players. That leaves the auditorium for eighth grade choir at 13 feet. And then at the high school, if the band can play in the band room at 9 feet side to side and 9.8 feet at a diagonal, that leaves the auditorium for the choir, and they could go at 11 by 10. So it just varies by size, but some of the things like if the high school band can be in the band room at 9 feet, 9 by 9.8, then that allows the choir to function, and then we get rehearsals every day. So right now the high schools, we see them twice a week. And so as it stands now at 13 feet, they get one full rehearsal a week because we have to share the auditorium, which is the space. At the middle school, it's worse than that. It's basically the rooms do not fit at all, the cohort sizes. And it varies between that 8 feet and, well, 8 feet and 13
So
feet.
8 feet is that's the least amount of distance that you need to fit everybody in there.
The least amount is the 8th grade, or is the 6th grade band, and it's only one section. The other sections could do 10 feet, but it's just based on the numbers of the lettering, the cohorts, the way that it fell out. It wasn't, the cohorts didn't end up just even when you just space them up by letters.
Okay, so best practices for other bands and other choirs right now is 6 feet? What
You
are they
know,
saying? I mean, it's changing, right?
Yeah, it is changing. In our immediate area, in Pierce County, a lot of our colleagues, they haven't gotten to discuss this very much, and so it's been kind of mandated that 13, if you want to play, it's 13 feet, because that's what Pierce County has said. And that's what we're following currently. We would like to,
What was Viking Middle School at?
well, Viking Middle School, which is not in Pierce County, but Viking Middle School right now is playing at 12 feet, and they're playing without masks. So they're not playing with mitigation, but they're playing at 12 feet separate. And I don't know how long they've been doing that for, but it's been long enough, that's kind of been their common practice.
They're also using the gym at their
The gym,
school.
yeah, they're in the front, they're in the gym.
They're in the gym. So one of the issues with facilities is that all of our band and choirs in every grade level meet at the same time. So we've got basically 3 spaces to work with, like two groups. So even if we split up, so for basically 7th grade through 12th grade, a lot of times like I can take half the cohort and Joe can take half the cohort if we have the space available. Or same thing with choir. 6th grade, it's just Mike Fuller there for 6th grade and it's just JC Walker there for 6th grade choir. So they don't even have that option to split up and utilize 2 spaces. So they only have that 1 space, which is where some of that issue lies with the 6th graders.
Yeah, so 6th grade, again, 13 feet means that if they played, they're not playing or singing right now because of the space, but if they get a little help to supervise, 6th grade band would be, like I said, they get like 7 rehearsals in a quarter, but then 15 rehearsals of a quarter, they're not doing anything. Mike would have some music engaging activities for them, but essentially it'd be like a music study hall with a non-music supervisor. And that just doesn't seem like a good way to spend 6th grade band.
So 6th grade really is the issue then. It really kind of comes down to that.
Middle school is the issue.
So
The specific middle school.
no middle school choir student, 6th, 7th grade, has sung a note since school has started. We haven't hummed, we haven't sang, because even in the choir room right now with our numbers, we can't social distance at 6 feet, and that was the recommendation for humming. So that's why at the high school we can hum, because we can get each kid 6 feet apart. At the middle school, with our sizes and the way the choir room is set up, we can't. So 6th grade is a huge issue in both realms, but in the choir realm, not a single middle school student has performed music for 9 weeks.
How many students are we talking about in one space?
The cohorts vary.
Yeah, the cohorts vary. So like I can speak for high school band, like we've got the most we can fit in the band room at that 9 by 9.8 is 28 kids. And that would fit every one of the high school band cohorts. Choir is similar, although you have one cohort of 40.
We have one that's about 36, and the other side of it is 20. The symphonic group is very,
Lopsided.
heavy, yeah.
Middle school, you're looking at,
So, hey, you have fabulous timing. What is your largest 6th grade band? 53? 52. So what would happen then is if we can go inside into the 8 foot for that one, it would mean that they would play every other band class instead of every 3 band classes.
and so we'd be talking 25 kids in the band room.
Yeah, so I think 20, 25, 28, something like that is about the largest number, and it goes all the way down to, Brian has one section of Wind Symphony that's 13 kids? 13 kids, just by the way the alphabet worked out.
8th grade choir has one section of 8 kids.
Or 8,
And
okay.
then, but then, the 6th grade.
Oh, wait, can you repeat that?
8th grade choir has one section of 8 students. And then,
I still didn't catch that.
sorry, eighth grade choir has one section of 8 students.
8, gotcha, thank you.
I'll articulate better, that's most of my job.
Sing it, sing it.
Yeah, sing it. No, we're too close. But, 6th grade choir is in the auditorium at 9 to somewhere between 9 and 13 feet. And the reason it's a range is because the seats are a little awkward in the auditorium. So if it was less than 9, we said, no, one more seat. So the way that we mark that off is between 9 and 12 feet, we can fit 39 kids, and our largest 6th grade choir section has 30 feet in it. So that would be the dimensions of the largest 6th grade choir.
It really varies.
Remind me how long the class is.
Classes are about 40 minutes.
Okay.
And realistically, with directions, getting things out, talking, discussing music, performing a little bit of music, getting critique on it, getting feedback, talking a little more, I would guess that, probably 20, at a really good rehearsal, 25 minutes of music is probably actually made between everything. That'd be a good rehearsal if you only spent 15 minutes discussing.
Does your proposal have any allowance for the families who were not comfortable with this?
That would be something that we'd have to look further. We were still receiving results on that today.
Sure.
So we didn't have time to reach out and
I think we all feel though that we'll provide, we'll have to provide for a student if they're truly uncomfortable and they do not want to have that situation. I think, it's our goal to keep kids in music. And we've been doing that with homeschool kids. All of us are doing online lessons and things for the kids who are at home and not coming to school. And our main goal is keeping kids in the program and keeping kids making music. So we won't let that happen where they would just be isolated and forgotten.
Cindy, and
I
I'm
have
going to make a final comment.
Yep, I have one more question. Are there applicable studies that conflict with the studies you're sharing with us right now?
To my knowledge, no.
yeah.
The aerosol study in wind instruments and singing is a kind of a strange, unique study. So to our knowledge, these are the only 2 studies that directly are comparable to what we do. And there's a ton of studies out about COVID. I mean, you can look there's
Right.
tons of information about COVID, but this is kind of a couple things that bring to light what we do.
Okay, I work at the university, so I have a full understanding of cherry picking research, right? So I just want to make sure.
Yeah, sure.
Just want to make sure. And then my last question for you really quick. Can you promise that you won't come back in the next 2 to 3 months and ask to have a concert with parents invited to come and watch these kids singing?
Well, the nice thing is that our facilities now, the auditoriums at the high school and the middle school have streaming capabilities, right? Because some of our new construction put facility, some stuff in the auditorium that I think we could definitely take advantage of to keep those parents out of our building and allow them to still see their kids work.
But
It's a good
our
point.
athletics all have streaming too,
Yeah, that's true.
and we still get pressure to get more
Sure,
fans in the state.
Sure, okay.
It's a good point, Cindy.
So just as a process issue, it is a very rare occasion that the board hears about an issue and then takes action at the same meeting. We typically like to be able to receive presentations, have some time to think and do some more research. My recommendation is that we hold off, we don't take action on this today, especially because I know that the administration is really eager to make sure that our kids have as strong a music education as possible. I also know that the administration is landing at a different place compared to your presentation. And I think we need to have some time to review and figure out and synthesize and be creative. And so I guess mostly I'm looking at the board and saying, are you comfortable with, we've received important information, not taking action tonight, and then doing some more work so that we can make an informed decision when we would vote?
Well, we don't have it on the agenda tonight, so we
Well,
can't take action,
We
right?
do, actually. We have the potential.
Okay.
But my recommendation is that we not do it today. This is the first time we've heard this.
Like I said, I'd like to hear
Not
from,
picking on you, it's just the way that we tend to operate around.
I'd like to hear from administration. I
Okay.
mean, I think you need to hear both, I think.
Yeah, and
And we can do
if I could, I want to say publicly I don't think that you might hear one thing new tonight that I haven't talked with the music team about. And that would be, I honestly haven't studied the Minnesota. I haven't analyzed it and looked through it in great detail. You mentioned, I think it came out last week.
Just very
I
recently,
think on
last week.
Thursday last week.
So that'll be my free pass for that. I will say, as I was listening very attentively, I too reached out to Google swiftly and found a summary of that Minnesota study. And now I'm going to cherry pick a bit where I'm seeing one thing just for consideration that I think we all can dive into and look more closely at. Part of their implications of this study says specifically for activities involving high risk level wind instruments, i.e. trumpet, bass trombone, oboe, etc. Extra prevention measures such as reduction in occupancy, additional social distancing, and ventilation enhancements are needed in comparison to playing instruments with lower risk levels. So I would personally want to kind of dive in on that study a little more and understand it better. But aside from that, I would say this group has been very professional. We aren't arguing over our differences and opinions. I appreciate their advocacy for the students and for their programs for today as well as the future. They mentioned their kids are dropping the classes. That's concerning. For the record, you don't want to hear me play the sax, but I too played the saxophone, and I too was in swing choir, concert choir. I love music. I have no personal, I don't have an underappreciation for the social and emotional benefits that go with our students being able to participate in this, every much as some students are driven by athletics, some are driven by both, some are driven by math and science and social studies and ag and so on. I get all of that and I appreciate all of that. I also understand and can appreciate the equity issue with making this board and this district, myself included, moving forward in sports, but not going as fast perhaps with music as you would like to see us move. So I mean, those are the things I think that we have talked about openly other than the Minnesota study itself. And then lastly, I would just say that the 13-foot rule, from what I understand in speaking with DHS, is that somewhere there's a study, and I had included for the board in a packet in it, the email that I had also sent to this team that indicated some reference to the fact that there's a difference between aerosols and droplets. Basically, droplets, aerosols can carry further in the air. My words would be lighter, smaller, they can travel farther and so on. You could pull up your blue screen and say, well, wait a second, Benson, remember I told you about that study that was done on the mask, but there's some scientific differences between droplets and aerosols. I would just mention that as well. And so I think it's wise for the board perhaps to do some of your own thinking and if you want to do some more research, but you know, when I suggested that this was the final district's decision, this group respectfully asked, hey, can we come and talk to the board? Sorry, we differ with your opinion. And I said, absolutely. I don't want to be viewed as standing in the way of putting their opinion in front of the board. I don't want to represent their opinion. And so I too thank you for your presentation and for being here tonight.
Well, I shared my opinion. I'm ready to support it, but if we don't take action tonight, I think we need to take action next week. Because every week goes by, they got kids that need to be doing this stuff, so.
And I would just point out, we have not asked any of the coaches to come in front of us, any other classroom teachers to come in front of us. for mitigation on their teaching stuff.
And we
I would-
haven't heard studies on those topics.
Nor did we ask the music people to come here either.
Yeah.
But they've had to make their case. Everybody else had somebody making their case.
I don't normally put my opinion out there. I can't sing, I don't sing a lick, I don't care. I mean, music is whatever. I'm ready to vote tonight, really, honestly, because we're just wasting time then. We're wasting time when kids could be in front of music kids. And I don't think that anything is gonna really change in the next week. So I would put that forth. I think you guys have done your homework and you're gonna do whatever you can do to keep the kids safe. And I think it would be a good thing to move forward if we could.
I think that's the biggest priority from our standpoint is like, kids' safety is absolutely number one. Our safety is number one. Ellen, you mentioned, we wouldn't be here if we didn't think that this was going to be safe for our students and for us. We've got young families, we've got new families, we've got families and we want to be safe and we want to be healthy for them as well. And so, with that, I want to say thank you for listening to us today and Jamie and Kit and Mark and everyone for working with us over the past 9 weeks now, or well, actually well into the summer even, on this to make sure that our kids get a good opportunity.
It makes us feel really much of a team of people, of educators who are looking out what's good for kids.
Well,
Sorry, I didn't catch the very beginning of it, but I'd just be curious from the building principals, this is something I assume you guys have been involved for quite a while and would be on board with what's being said?
Yeah, from the very beginning.
Okay. Okay.
Very comfortable too. I think, to be honest, Jamie and the board are in a tough spot because what we're doing is listening to DHS guidance, which is saying 13 feet. That's really the only sticking point. And I know Jamie's and Mark's opinions. The sticking point is 13 feet versus 10 versus 8 or whatever it might be. And for you as a board, that's what you're going to have to really look at and decide is, are we going to deviate from DHS guidelines, which is AG Snyder currently giving us those guidelines, saying 13 feet versus the 8, 9, or 10 that is needed to have a successful music program.
Sure. Yeah, I hadn't said a lot up until this point. I'm probably more in line with Amy. I was in 8th grade choir, but only because you got to go to Valley Fair at the end of the year. So if they told me I had to sit 13 feet from everyone else, I would have just left. And, but I would be supportive of it, and I would respect if people want more time, but a week's not going to change my opinion either. So.
Stacy, can I chime in really quick here? I think because this is the first time that it's come up, I haven't done any research on this, and I think if we have anybody in the room that would like to do more research and look into it, dive into it deeper on their own, and it's 1 week and it costs the kids one more class period, to me, it's worth the time to take to look at it and talk about it and do some of our own research. We're meeting every week. It's not like we're waiting a month. I think that would be more in line with how we have acted with things as a board, I think, to take that time to do that. That's my opinion.
I agree, simply because I'm the one who is responsible for keeping traffic flowing. Everybody has important things, but we like to do things in a measured way so that we can avoid as many mistakes as we can, so that we can have a plan very well detailed. My preference is that we hold off. We put this as an agenda item for next Monday. We can do some more research. Colleagues, okay?
Yes. Yep. I think so. My opinion may not change, but I do want to, I do want to see it or study it a little bit more or have some more information. It may not change my opinion. I do want the kids to do it, but
we all,
yeah, we all do.
For everybody here, we all want
yep, we all do.
To do it. We want to be able to do this in a really careful, measured, responsible way. So thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing this to us and allowing us to have conversation with you about it. We are here next Monday, just like every Monday for the last many months. You'll hear more from us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to say anything else? All right, so then we are going to move on to information item, letter B, and this has to do with learning environments for all of our students, virtual, equal, hybrid, I guess not our interest.
Yeah, this is just the kind of a standing issue. The board asked that we include this on the agenda as long as we're getting together every Monday, just for an overall update. The biggest news from today, of course, is that we made a decision that effective tomorrow, Rocky Branch will be closed for 2 weeks due to some staff member test positive COVID cases and the potential, I guess we felt like the need was there for us to take a proactive measure to mitigate the potential for additional spread. And in a matter of about 6 days, we had a few cases and another person waiting to see whether they test positive, and we just thought that we need to play it safe at that particular building. We've indicated that we may close a classroom, we may close a school, that there's any number of potential actions that we would need to take, and this represents one of those actions. But back to beyond that, on the how's it going with the hybrid model, how's it going with our virtual e-school, how are we doing in K-6? That's really the focus of this agenda item for now. So if the principals have anything to add, anything on the how's it going, I personally kind of view this as the instructional question of the day. How's it going? We have then, where Mark and Kit on the next agenda item, where you have talked with the board the last couple of weeks in looking at Wednesday, maybe switch to Monday or Friday and so on. I think we find ourselves always merging these two items together on our agenda when you provide the board with an update. So maybe to start, K-6, any specific update to provide?
No.
Generally, things are going okay, Nate?
Yeah. I don't think there's really anything new for me to add. We are thoroughly enjoying having our kids face to face every single day, and we're taking as many precautions as we can, paying attention to what we're doing. We're having to remind ourselves regularly that past practices of our spacing as adults and how we work with each other on a daily basis need to be paid attention to. So whether that means while we collaborate with each other, we're sitting 6 feet or more apart, coming together only when we need to look at a shared document, or doing as much of that virtually as we can. We have intra-district collaboration between specialists. We've had some meetings in the past where those people have gotten together physically. I don't know that we need to do that. Probably moving forward, in the most recent events, we will be doing that virtually because we can do that just as well that way. So yeah, we're paying attention and making small adjustments here or there, but nothing major is happening. We're enjoying our kids and our teachers are happy to be there.
Yeah, no, West Ed's doing well. We're finally at full strength against that fight, which is a positive, and that was nice to see the subboard for the end of the day, so that was great. Fridays, I wanted to mention that that's really come together well too. But that's been really nice. Staff are really appreciating the time to have with each other to collaborate. Many of our groups that are more than 3 people, their classroom group is 3 people. The rest are collaborating via Zoom on special ed, so we don't have 8 to 10 people in a room. So doing that. Our staff meetings we're going to start doing through Zoom. Just really don't want the whole staff to have to go through and do that, so that's helping. But for Friday, I want to say thank you. That's gone really well. Our support staff did an awesome job doing that. Now this has been our 3rd or 4th Friday. That's really kind of a nice rhythm with that as well. Support staff and then my office staff has done a great job kind of getting a system to know which students we staying, which aren't. But some parents change on Fridays, and that's okay. But really been happy with how that's
How are the children doing who are still staying on Friday afternoons? I know most of them are gone. Many of them are gone. That's going okay.
We have, 60, 65, somewhere in there stay. This last Friday, I had my own son stay, my youngest, and asked him after how it went, if he really enjoyed it, to do a craft that has some, for his grade level younger, they're being read to. They have recess time, and, that shifted. The first time was 8 degrees, and I think we stayed a little longer a lot of time. This time, we came in under a lot of time. It was like 20 degrees. But it's good. Kids bring snack. We have extra snack for them. It's been a neat collaboration between our regular ed support staff, our sped support staff, and some kids club staff that Angela has graciously given to us. It's been really neat. But I've enjoyed seeing as many of our support staff taking leadership roles within that, being in charge of certain aspects. I was pretty involved the first couple weeks. This last week, I tried to get more involved in the collaboration to be able to help me be part of that. And it's really been neat to see how they're doing. And our kids keep coming. My parents are the ones that have talked about it. It's been positive feedback, so it's really appreciated.
Well, Rocky Branch is doing very well, as you all know. We today volunteered to try some distance learning for the next couple of weeks. And so we've had no incidents with students, but we have seen an uptick in staff becoming 3 staff members positive, with others being removed due to close contacts. And so after seeing the first one hit, I thought we were going pretty steady and going to be able to have people back at the end of this week. Then we had another one at the end of the week, one over the weekend at so in consultation with me and Amy Snyder, our environmental, we really want to get a handle on what's going on. And so it was a very tough decision to move to pivoting towards distance learning opportunity. So I don't want to make light of it. This is a first in our district, and we feel terrible that we need to do that. We also feel that it's our duty to make sure that this stops here and that we can come back and learn face to face for the long term. So right now that's where we're at. So it's been a big deal today at our school. A lot of people are pitching in and doing a wonderful job supporting each other, and some people are not staff members are concerned. There's a lot of misinformation in the community as far as people get on Facebook and they mischaracterize what's really going on there. And so I want everybody to understand that this is the responsible action to take at this point. We do not have a sick school, nor do we want this to balloon out to a level that we can't mitigate. So that's where we're at.
Can I ask a question about that? There are some kids that are going to be able to take advantage of Kids Club all day at Rocky Branch.
Yes.
And how does the distance learning work with them then? Will they be basically distance learning
Yes.
with Kids Club there?
Yes.
Will the distance learning be synchronous?
At this point, we are preparing, and we have prepared to do some synchronous lessons. This is a 2-week period, so it is actually a good process for us to delve into that area. Yes, there will be some synchronous learning.
I know that it was not easy to be able to figure out an option for families who really need to be able to have kids at school because of their own family situations. And so whatever you did to make that a possibility for some of our families, thank you.
Yeah, we'll give credit to Angela Bonehart, who coordinates that Kids Club program. She really had to scramble today to identify, we've worked on some planning ahead of time in anticipation of events like this, but all truth be told, there's some of the finer details that you never identify until you have to engage in it. But Angela did a great job of pulling together staff. we've indicated in the information we've sent out, there could be limits on this. We aren't gonna have 400 people in that building. We don't have the space, we don't have the right mitigation efforts to do that, nor do we have the staff. And so there will be a prioritization process for who's allowed in and who we might have to say no to. We hope to accommodate everybody that really needs it, but we've had those disclaimers stated. And so, the board was provided some of the information that we sent out today. Dave did a nice job putting some info out to staff. Angela did her part. Chuck, our school nurse, was kind of all hands on deck today. So credit to the team that pulled together. We think that we've responded with an appropriate amount of communication so far, and there will be more communication as other questions come up and we proceed.
Thank you. You want to talk about virtual and hybrid? Any updates there?
Sure, I would say that, a couple things, we have seen, more responsiveness from our vendor. We've had, a much better week, we've had some of the pressure, it hasn't been perfect, but it's been much better than what we experienced. We're also, this week, our fun challenge is we're working with our fourth K through second grade students to do their required reading readiness assessment by the state of Wisconsin. So whether families are coming in person to that option, or our teachers are doing a great job trying to mitigate and to work with learning coaches at home to do those assessments. So lots of good learning for our staff. And so we've got a couple of our coaches and leaders specialists that are helping. Title I staff in the building have really reached out and helped our school teachers as well. And thus the reason I have the wonderful privilege of substituting two of our teachers who are helping our primary teachers. So they've done a great day with virtual learning. Our West Side students who make 55 had to speak with our superintendent, ask questions. They also had an opportunity to speak with both Chad, Dave, and myself for further exploration, learning about what all it is we do to support. So we have a fun day today and more to come on Wednesday. So like you did the opportunity to have a mock support meeting with students. So
That's what they're going to do. We'll see. All right. Anything for 712?
Sixth grade is still going, 0 student cases, 0 teaching staff cases. So things are going really well. Hybrid seventh grade, we're going to stay our course with Wednesdays. There's not very enough sensitivity to see. We look at different models, different options.
Thanks, Mark. Good.
We're at the high school level, we're doing well. I'm proposing that we keep our 5-day structure the current way we have it with the AABB, or the early week and late week cohort. I shared with you, if you want to pull up, or I'll pull them up for you, just where we're at, what the hybrid adjustment looks like. So some data points. 3-4 weeks ago, I think I was standing here saying our failure rates were as good as a normal year. Well, they're not so much anymore. I have 172 total students currently at the high school with 1 or more Fs. And so I assume with the last week of the term, typically that's cut in half, but that would still give us about a 5% failure rate, or a little bit more. We typically average between 2 and 3% of the failure rate total. So it is a little bit higher with that, and our teachers and students are working hard, and we've been talking through that. Just so you also know, when we look at things long-term, again, at the high school level, I also and our students have to worry about credits. And so we have approximately 27 students right now that are 2 or more credits behind their peers, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, 15 of which are at the high school, 12 of which are at the Renaissance. So you have those numbers in front of you too. So as we continue to move through this pandemic, my worry becomes thinking more and more about some of our at-risk students or students who are falling behind academically and what we can essentially do then to help and support them. So my proposal this evening for you to try to hopefully adopt and moving into term 2 is talking about keeping our Wednesdays as they stand and moving to what we would refer to as Wednesday win or intervention times. And what that essentially does is it gives Wednesdays an opportunity for those kids who need those interventions, time with their staff, and time with their teachers. I think right now, I personally, again, would love to have more instructional time and all our kids in the building again, but that's not where we're at. And so right now, I think we have to really take care of our students who need our help first and foremost. And those are the students that I just shared with you. And if we don't make this adjustment in these first 9 weeks, we're then looking at a semester. And again, remembering our block schedule, these are year-long courses that students would potentially fail or lose credit in over an entire semester over the holidays. So what we're looking for your approval and conversation and input on, is again that Wednesday win time. What that really means again is we refer to it, a lot of schools use it and have labeled it win time. It's what I need. It's what those kids need. Some of them need time, some of them need support, some of them need just extra spots and instructional time with their teachers. This also fits all students. So when I talk about 172 kids who are not doing well right now, I again remember talking to you last week, said we still have upper level kids that are also struggling, that are wanting to take challenging classes, but without that added support are also not doing quite well. Those students also can come in and use that time as well too. So what this essentially is it gives students a choice to come into school and either work with their teacher during the block that they would normally be assigned if they have their own transportation, or it would give the option, which most of our students probably would take, which would be following that virtual schedule. Students are then going to be able to work with the teacher. I'm going to work with Mr. Schultz, and I know he's missing 3 or 4 assignments, or there's a key concept that's missing. I'm able to at least have Mr. Schultz some more one-on-one time or some group time with him. There might be 3 or 5 students that have that same concept that are being missed, but now we're paying attention to those kids where right now in our current format, it is not allowable to the extent that we'd like to. If we were in a classroom environment 5 days a week, we'd be able to see those kids more often, but we only see them 2 days a week face-to-face. It's very difficult to intervene on those off days as much as we'd like to. Again, especially because the teachers are teaching on the other cohort side of that. So what we're asking again is to keep the schedule. And from our survey that we had, a majority of our students and families like the cohorting model that we had in place with Wednesdays there. It also doesn't change any schedule from a 7-12 model. There's no issues related to a transportation side of things on that end of it. And so we feel like the Wednesdays is going to give us our best opportunity moving forward to first and foremost focus on our students that need that extra help and support. The equity question in the room, though, is when we talk about transportation for those kiddos right now. We're not confident enough yet that I can stand here and say I have a transportation plan with Todd Burnett, that I have a list that's going to change every week or every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, depending on how we look at that. But it's something that I want you to consider and think about as we continue to move into it. All I would ask as an administrator tonight is that we give an opportunity to at least have the intervention model in place, identify our students, see who we are still having disconnections with, and then if we are able to provide transportation at a later date, I'd love to see that. Because I know that's a part of what we want. But if we don't even move forward into next term with that, I think it'll be far too late January 22nd, if I'm being honest with you. Any questions or concerns?
Good. I think this sounds good for the student standpoint, but who are the teachers on this? What's the impact on the teachers? Does this increase or decrease their workload? What's the impact?
Christine, you want to maybe chime in on that since you're here?
This would help immensely, because teachers are teaching in person in the online lessons with the virtual Wednesday platform, but also then if you, I think it's great, we have quarantine, it just happened with the football players being out, and I would probably get 14 students alone or in the class. And so this is a chance that if a student is quarantined or sick, then you're not like, it's like
And this would be 7 through 12?
This would be 9 through 12 currently right now. I believe Meyer Middle School is already having interventions built within part of their day, if I'm not mistaken. Part of our RCS second quarter, November 9th, the week of November 9th.
And Ren students?
Ren students, they're still meeting every other day, so they're on a separate schedule, and I've worked with Mr. Silver and continue to talk and let him know where we're at.
What would, I'm trying to kind of read this as I go here, but what would be, just use the example of, I think you said it was 172 currently at a failing level for one of the classes. The idea is those kids potentially need some help. What happens if they don't voluntarily take the help?
Again, so we're going to make this an attendance day for them, just as we were in our synchronous Wednesdays. We've required all of our students to attend. In the last 7 weeks that we've had that, we're averaging under 10 students that are not attending online. So I'm very hopeful that those students now, with smaller class sizes, number one, that they know that attention is really solely based for them, that they're more comfortable to kind of work and learn in that. And I'll be honest also, it's not meant to be punishing in any way, shape, or form, but it does incentivize students as well to kind of do well academically, stay engaged with where they're at, because then again, they won't have to be in class necessarily on Wednesdays. I can guarantee you though, that in talking with our student body, many of our students will still use that extra time with some of our teachers. Specifically, I want to make it clear that in this, it says that the transcripted credit, the dual credit and AP classes would still run their normal classes. So again, my son being in calculus would still show up to calculus second block on Wednesdays. But again, other students that might need extra help with their teacher in AP biology have the opportunity to come in and work on AP biology as well too.
I support this, but I'm a little confused. Christine, you said it would help the teachers that had a lot of students who are quarantined. I just don't understand that. How does that work?
Okay, so if you have a student absent for really any reason.
Yeah.
Then they're emailing you to find out, what they should do in class, or they're at home now on lessons, they don't understand something. And so it's like the double whammy, if they're not school at all. And so.
But they still wouldn't be with this, right?
Pardon?
They still wouldn't be under this program because they're quarantined.
No, but then instead of the Wednesday having to meet with all your students, you could focus on those students that need help that are behind and have questions on the topic. So instead of coming up with a lesson for all, you really want that.
If they were.
So instead of working with 30 kids on a Wednesday, they might be working with 4. And the 4 kids that actually need that help and support.
Without a preparation, really.
Correct.
And if they were on quarantine, they were not even in school 2 days.
Yeah.
To get that
Yeah.
feedback.
And therefore, another opportunity for them to get disconnected, to not understand an assignment or a particular objective. It just gives the teacher more time to make sure that we're keeping those kids with their grade level peers.
But
as
doesn't
well.
this bring more students into the school and take more time for teachers because more kids are coming in on Wednesday than would be previously?
I don't think so. So on Wednesdays currently, we already have students coming in to make up exams on off days. For instance, we have students coming into this library and working because they don't have an internet connection. This model we're stealing from basically our SPED department. Our SPED department has done a phenomenal job with students who are receiving additional supports with IEPs. So instead of the 2 days a week that they're getting, they're in their IEP, it might be 3 or 4 days that they're coming in on the off days, but they're coming into a cohorted area. They're coming into a closed area. And we've seen great strides and support with our staffing in that and also with our students in success. But we're also getting to a breaking point with that. Not only is it a SPED issue anymore in this pandemic, it's an everyone issue. And so what we need to do is take that small model that we had success with in the first 9 weeks and try to replicate that on a larger scale. And that's what our hope is for our staff to be able to do that.
I love this idea, but a quick question. So a week or 2 or 3 weeks, something like that, you were talking about getting a waiver from the from DPI for instructional hours. Does this impact instructional hours in any way for our other students?
We have a waiver.
No, you do have it in place?
We
Okay,
have it in place, so it wouldn't.
so it doesn't matter.
We did, that was last week.
Okay.
Things like this,
Okay.
and not having to have it be. So we don't have to dig in, setting whether it's Wednesday or off, hybrid. You guys allow that flexibility.
Got it. Thank you.
So I think to Mike's point, I think I have this clear, but I just want to finalize it. So basically on Wednesday, I'm the middle of the road student. I can function online, I'm engaged, but I don't necessarily need a whole lot more help or I'm just kind of existing fine. Those people would be the ones who would have potentially a little bit less contact in this case. And I think that's where if 70% of your students are in that level, I think that's where you're requiring less work for the teacher to touch base with all of those kids like they are now and come up with a lesson plan. But the ones who need the more help or more engagement are the ones that are getting it at this point. Is that a fair way to
Yes,
sum up?
and I think it will help all students. So the one thing that we haven't talked about is just the social emotional impact right now, or how stressed those students are from a survey standpoint. So I can use both my kiddos would not be forced to be on a Wednesday, so to speak, due to their grades. But I know that they're still going to continue to work on those school days because of the amount of academic load that they're still trying to carry and deliver. So I think it's going to help ease even some of our students who are not in this 70% or below or needing added support. It also will alleviate, again, some of our upper end kiddos who are really taking a challenging class. Maybe it's the student who was encouraged to take AP US history, but really isn't, it's got a lot of reading in behind it and is now doubting that. I'd rather have that student continue to try and work in that environment if they have that added support with Mr. Van Pelt or any of their other teachers for that matter. So it's going to take care of both ends of our spectrum and a spectrum of our students that are really struggling social and emotionally. Speaking of social and emotionally, our counseling team and our student services team will also be setting up appointments throughout this whole day and supporting students that may not need any academic support, but need social emotional support. Whether that's a Zoom group or individual meetings, they're looking at that as an option as well.
So some of these students who will come, either in person or virtually, will be self-selected. I'm imagining there could potentially be some kids who really need to be here, but aren't necessarily recognizing that themselves. So there will be a mechanism to identify those kids and to make sure they're accountable and.
Correct. So we run our list each and every week, and we talk about that in our student services team. So not only will we look at students with academic concerns, but also just from a support standpoint, to have them have the ability to work here. So, and again, I want to make this really clear so we're very transparent. One thing that you have to also understand is that I could have an A cohort kid and a B cohort kid in school with the social distancing, but I could have 4 kids in the classroom and 2 ends in the classroom. Our teachers already have a plan to set up sequence for those Wednesdays. If we ever have to trace back, but we're looking at less than 100 students typically on any given day on a Wednesday. So I just want to, again, be very, very clear and transparent.
That's a really good point, is keeping track of this because it's going to vary each week, right? For tracing purposes.
Correct. So we'll have our list of students who we know are attending in person, and we'll have our list of students who we know have to attend either in person or online in that schedule. We'll be keeping track of that.
Well, and we heard a week ago that Wednesdays weren't feeling super productive for students, and the stress level is super high. So this may help with a little bit of the workload for those students. It creates a space for our teachers to connect with students that really need the help. I'm sure teachers want to do that anyways, right? So to have the space to do that is really, really important. I think this is great.
So this is also kind of piggybacking off the music. I don't have a good enough handle on how those schedules work, but like say, would somebody potentially have a band class in block 2 and they need help with I just am not getting this, whatever it is. Can those kids potentially come in too? I mean,
For any student who needs any intervention, right?
So this could potentially help the music department that was just here too, in terms of what they're allowed.
So we have band choir blocks 3 and 4, but they give lessons blocks 1 and 2.
Okay.
That it might help with some of the mitigation that if a student did not have to come in for an academic thing or academic reason, that they could come in still for a lesson or some small group activity through band or choir or another elective, bring that teacher's lesson time.
I'd have to think they're really supportive of it then.
I don't know of a teacher who, quite honestly, not supportive of it. Any student that I've talked to, they're all needed for various reasons. It's taking care of all 3 levels that we talked about. If you look at your district priorities again too, it's taking care of our district priorities both for staff and for students. I feel like, again, we call it Win Wednesdays, but it is a win for nearly everybody at this point.
Kit, were the school counselors seeing people or that type of thing on Wednesdays before or no?
Yes, they were.
Oh, they were, okay.
Yes. But they'll have more of an enhanced opportunity if they run small groups and things. For right now, actually, the counselor is on close contact quarantine. She's still working from home with one-on-one counseling appointments. They're using her office as the virtual office now from her.
Sure.
At home. So we're still trying to meet the needs of our students.
So school board, my sense is this really is not a change in our learning environment. It's really a change in exactly how you're going to run the day.
Yep.
So I am not sure that we have to take action on this. I think that this is really an administrative decision. But if there's somebody who doesn't agree or is not supportive of this, we simply could take action. But I don't necessarily.
Sounds like a
think that we need
no-brainer.
to.
I mean,
I think that this is, we are trusting you to use the schedule that we have with this being on Wednesday to the best interest of our kids and our staff. And it sounds like you have a really good plan.
And again, Mark and I also, along with all of our administrators, our hope is that we are back and we can transition. This still allows us, as Amy had mentioned 2 weeks ago, to go into every other Wednesdays and add things back into it if and when we need it. The real core purpose of this is to take care of our interventions with our kids that need it the most right now.
Well, I
Thank
think
you.
that that's really important. I think the other thing that's really important is we are not saying that we're making one decision that lasts forever and ever
Right.
on this. We are making decisions and they need to shift in order to meet the needs of our kids. And that's what we're doing. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
I just want to know when do you want to start that?
I don't know. Tell me when the numbers, let's see what the numbers look like, Amy.
But I mean, your plan is to start it pretty soon.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, this time?
yes.
Wednesday.
Oh, this is November 2nd, so we have 4 days with election week. This first Wednesday will be on November 9th.
Okay. And Chris, thank you for being here and being able to give us that insight. It's always good to have a sense of where the teachers are on it. That matters to us. All right, now we're going to move into action items. If we have anything that we need to be talking about related to learning environment, Mr. Benson, please.
So I'll kind of fast forward through some of the slides here again that we always present. Here's the St. Croix County dashboard. Here's county dashboard. Diversity. Positivity rates. You can see between Pierce and St. Croix, some differences there. Trending not in the direction that we would like to see. Again, a Pierce County dashboard piece, we'd like to show this next piece in relation to where this is a reflection of all of the Pierce County school districts. Pointing you over to that looks like our local case. And this is really the slide that we can spend more time talking about. The staff absences here under the quarantine. That's the close contact group. Isolation. Seeking a diagnosis or a member of their household. Positive cases. Again, we do this in a, I think the right word here would be accumulative polling, those that are current, positive, or have since returned to work. And then the students, 31 out due to symptoms, 22 out due to household member. And of course, this number has climbed significantly. 57 of those, I believe, are specific to Rocky Branch.
How is that number going to change next week?
Sorry?
How is that number going to change, or how is the closing of Rocky Branch going to affect those numbers for next week? I mean, will you count everybody from Rocky Branch?
Oh, or nobody.
No, but I mean, if you keep everybody home for distance learning, will those numbers
Well, yeah,
be a part of that?
I would say.
Okay.
They're not close contact. If you're a student at Rocky Branch, you're identified as a close contact.
we're not going to answer.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Really not close contact definition of. So.
So, yeah, I mean, again, we view the action taken with the 2-week closure at Rocky to be taking a proactive measure, put this mitigation in place to avoid having it become, you know, a local spread within that building. So we would not, as Dave mentioned, we're not going to assume that all those kids would be close contacts. They would not. I added a slide here just because I wanted to talk about this a little bit. This is what I call kind of two ends of the extreme. And maybe this is philosophical viewpoints. There are some that feel like we should remain open, that we should have kind of loosen up on these mitigation efforts. Some people go so far as to refer to that as natural infection or herd immunity. And on these two ends of the spectrum, the opposite would be play it super safe, just shut down all your schools, shelter in place, lock things down. Those would be the two extreme ends. We've always, I don't know, I'm the one that likes to use the phrase of two sides of the same coin. One side being COVID compared to the other side of the coin being our what we believe to be in the best interest of our students' social, emotional, physical, and academic best interests. So as we weigh this out, I just found a way in my own mind to, again, the extreme end would be don't take these measures. Don't do mass physical distancing and so on, versus shut it down and play completely safe. And we continue to operate in this realm of we're all just trying to figure out the right kind of balance. There isn't a person in this room that would not acknowledge that there certainly are risks with every single decision that we make that falls short of just shut the place down and be done with it. But we're trying to figure out this gray area, doing our best. Not everything is red versus green. Not everything is black versus white. There's an awful lot of gray. And we're just trying to figure out what the best approach is. And to be clear, we certainly are never going to minimize the benefits of watching for our students' social, emotional, physical, and academic best interests, but we also have to keep an eye on safety. It feels like, by example, every week we come here, we're talking about some kind of a tweak, some kind of a revision, some new lever we're pulling, something new and different that we're trying to explore that touches on one side of the coin or the other. Whether it's the Wednesday issue, whether it's the band issue, music, chorus, whether it's shutting down Rocky Branch, pick the side of the coin. But we continue to be flexible and nimble. We continue to pay attention to research as every week and month goes by. The world is learning more about COVID, and we're just trying to do our best to try to figure out the right approach. So again, recommendations here. I talk about the Rocky Branch piece. I don't need to reiterate these pieces. I'll just add. We did not mention that we will also provide meals as we are currently doing for the at-home folks. If we are not delivering to the doorstep as we did in that time period, late spring and over the summer months, but we are providing that pickup option at least. But we've already talked about all the rest of these things. Here, under additional recommendations, no change to the hybrid model with that exception that was outlined by Kit. And no current changes or recommendations related to where we're at ending our fall sports seasons and or leading into the spring winter sport schedule. Timeline wise, winter sports is not quite on our doorstep, but coming soon. In a couple of weeks, some of our winter sports will start practice, and then a week later, some of the other winter sports will start practice. Right now, I'm hearing zero appetite from other school districts in our region or in our conference. I'm hearing zero appetite for them to pivot away from continuing to move forward with winter sports. Just a side note for the board, I know that we do not, particularly in this kind of case with COVID risks, that we don't just do what our neighbors are doing, but I think it's relevant to share that with you. And also to share with you somewhat along that line is that you may recall that Eau Claire, having two different high schools that are in our conference, they were a bit of an outlier. They did not do fall sports. They are scheduled to begin winter sports. So we'll pivot on their part. And again, my last slide that I always put up here, that we all have to continue to do our part. The numbers in Wisconsin are not good. So here the slide, here's St. Croix County, that again, the concerns continue to grow in our nation and in our state, county. We're back to that gray area. We're just trying to do the very best that we can with safety being paramount, but also balancing out that other side. Any questions?
I'm curious, just a couple things. When you talk to AZ Snyder, my understanding is we don't have a whole lot of contact with St. Croix County, or not nearly to the level that we do with AZ at Pierce County. But seeing I think the Pierce County number on what I'm referring to is that Harvard report, where we're at 17.4 and St. Croix is 48.2. I believe those have gone in different directions for at least 3 weeks now, maybe longer, since we had our initial spike in Pierce County. Does she ever bring up St. Croix County and where they're at or anything or does it not come up when you discuss things?
Occasionally, she obviously keeps in contact with St. Croix County DHS. But as you can appreciate, her main responsibility, of which it's a big responsibility, just within Pierce County. So they have a specific emphasis on their mitigation efforts as a county DHS department with schools, with nursing home, long-term care facilities, medical facilities, their capacity. Not that they aren't also involved in other individual cases and so on, factories, large businesses, industry. But yes, there's some conversation that we have related to, what's going on in St. Croix County, but the primary focus is with Pierce.
Okay. I'm just curious if we have any sense if the Pierce County number looked like the St. Croix, if she would be at this meeting tonight, or if we would have a different recommendation. I mean, if she doesn't say anything to that regard.
Only, I guess that all of this continues to be very fluid. that, as we've said before, tomorrow could be a different story, just as today was a different story at Rocky Branch, almost overnight. It was overnight, frankly. And so everything just remains very fluid.
And there's no, on the St. Croix County side, we don't know of anything where there's been additional shifts in any of the schools there, based on recommendations from their department, or are we hearing that kind of thing happening?
The only shift would be back to Hudson that went to a hybrid 2 weeks ago, perhaps 3. Beyond that, I'm not aware of any other St. Croix County school that has made a significant pivot or shift. Do you guys know of?
I know, my friend at Rice Lake is proposing the hybrid model at Rice Lake.
Sure.
See Prescott,
Okay.
Rice Lake.
I just was curious if she gave any feedback, because we kind of straddle that line, if she said anything in regard to St. Croix County or not. So.
For us, that just you're causing me to think a little more deeply on your question as well, and so to drill it even deeper on the conversation with her, not that she and I and us don't keep an eye on our nation and our state and those counties that are surrounding our specific region and the university, but drilling it down into its smallest piece is really what's going on in our house, in our home right here with our 7 schools. And some of St. Croix County has an influence on that. I've described to you that we have students and faculty that live in St. Croix County. So the numbers that we reflect in our house, in our school district, are also a reflection of both Pierce County and St. Croix. So I think that's always a part of our conversation to the extent that it affects our house.
Okay.
I have a quick question. Based on what's happening at Rocky Branch, are there things that we're learning that we need to do differently or better or anything like that?
Some, I think, not just as a standalone with today's events at Rocky, but we continue to see the opportunities for us to continue to look at all of our existing mitigation efforts that have been in place. One would be social distancing. So being sure that people are complying with the need to wear the mask, to practice social distancing, to make every effort. We've been transparent to say there, in grades K-6 for sure, we do not have 6 feet distance. It doesn't happen. If we had more than 6 feet distance, we wouldn't show you a laundry list of close contacts every week. And so, yes, there are things that we continue to learn and share with staff and that we continue to work on.
Good. And then is there Thanksgiving and holidays coming up are a little stressful, right? Figuring out what people are going to do and crossing all over the place with groups, with family gatherings and things like that. Is there, as a school district, is there any additional concern or conversation about that?
Yeah, I appreciate that you asked that question, that we've had some internal debate over Thanksgiving. So we have historically, and we continue this year to have on our calendar, that we are not in session the Wednesday before Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving or Friday, followed by Saturday, Sunday. What if we were to take off, have everybody home on the Monday and Tuesday of Thanksgiving week, when they're already at home Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 5 plus Monday, Tuesday, plus the Sunday and the Saturday before that, that we would have a 9-day window. And on balance, the debate was whether to to bring that kind of a recommendation to the board this evening. And I just felt like, again, on balance, some of the things that need to be considered with that, including how does that impact children and families? We're choosing to not bring that recommendation to the board this evening, but we know that if we think that that's a necessary step, we have to make that decision no later than next week, because we owe it to families to give them advance notice.
But you know, as you say that, Jamie, my instinct on that was, if we took a 9-day break, my thought is that increases the likelihood that we're gonna bring back some, because what are those families and kids gonna do over 9 days? Here in the school, we can at least control what they're doing. They've got a routine, the things they're doing. We send them home for 9 days. I would think you may want, I mean, you can't take away Thanksgiving, but I would think we want to increase the days or change it differently, but I would not support at all a 9-day break at Thanksgiving. I can't see how that would help unless we've got to close down. I would hope, though, that as a district, before Thanksgiving and before Christmas, we have a note that goes out to families reminding them of how important it is, because we now have an example of, if you don't do this, look what happens in a building, and you could have your kids home for 2 more weeks. You don't say it that bluntly, but basically, I think that message needs to go out and remind families that this isn't just you, it's everyone else in your school, it's the teachers, it's the community. We have a responsibility as well. So.
Yeah. You've heard a lot of news about that's where the spread has been in family or small gatherings as opposed to the large gatherings, because people are avoiding those. But it's the family ones that, oh, it's just my family. I know them, I trust them, but that's extended families are risks.
I'm telling, it depends on your family. My family is an enormous risk. My brothers and sisters are awful. That's beside the point. Sorry, tangent. And Alan, I would come from the exact opposite perspective. I would think that taking a little bit of time that following week would get you into the window of where you'd start to see symptoms if somebody did have close contact right by that time. Plus it balances our early week, late week students with that little bit of time. So I'm excited to see what you come back with next week, Mr. Benson.
I think the issue is how people spend the time, because
Right.
if you don't cut off, if you cut off the time spent on Thursday, then, you know, and you extend further after the holiday, and then you say, okay, you've got some time to see if symptoms develop. But if people say, well, we can extend Thanksgiving through the weekend, then it doesn't do you any good. It still comes down to how those people are going to spend the time, whether they're given 9 days or 3 days, I think. And
For sure. We're going to count on the other districts keeping their kids in school, though. So there's going to be nothing to do but
They
stay
can't all
home.
go to a Deer Hunting Lodge.
Yeah, I get the point. I think it's just hard to, it's hard to say that. Some people would take the time and spend it, you know, in a way that you might not like to see in terms of distancing, and others are going to do it whether they've got 1 day off or 9 days off.
What if we went virtual the week after Thanksgiving?
When we talk about this, it's like vacation.
Yeah.
Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, it's an excellent opportunity to continue to the Rocky Branch experiment. I mean, that is a wonderful opportunity to keep them away. They're still engaged in school. They're not losing, you know, time and that kind of thing. But might be a thought.
But are they engaged? Because I think
Well,
we're just talking about Wednesdays bringing more kids back.
Yeah.
Because they're not, because they need to be more engaged.
Yeah, they do.
And we heard last week that it's really hard for them to be engaged when they're not here.
Yeah.
I think it has the opposite effect.
Mike.
It's a tough balance.
Mhm. Thank you.
I really appreciate the variety of perspectives on that.
Yeah.
Believe me, I appreciate the
It's
the
divided.
Clear
up.
direction.
No, my little cynical comment is, these are the kind of conversations that are going on every day inside our school district with our leadership team. And the gray area piece of the slide that I referred to earlier.
So at this point, my understanding is you're not making any recommendations that would require a board vote for tonight.
Correct.
I will say that if on the slide, it talked about no change currently for the rest of fall sports and going into winter sports. We're going to continue on that path. I hope that we have a conversation about things that we've learned in fall sports, about additional mitigation strategies that we think would be important if we were to continue with winter sports.
So I saw that we hosted playoff soccer at Raymer Field on Saturday afternoon with, I didn't catch the number of people that were in attendance for that.
I would guess that it was probably close to what Raleigh estimated, which was, he probably even just said 3 per player, I would say would be good.
So 18 kids per team or something.
24 per team, I figured
Sure.
75. The Richmond's visiting loser side was, everybody was masked, I was there.
Okay.
I was in the booth, nice and warm, while everybody else was outside, but it was well attended, and everybody was very respectful. I don't remember seeing anyone take their mask off. YouTube, I watched the girls volleyball game here, that seemed to have gone quite well as well, and I never saw any interaction. And nice thing I see is, you know, it's bad habit, but they're not waving across the net instead of shaking hands, or there was no interaction between the athletes. Really proud of that.
That's good. Yeah. I'm glad it worked out.
Anything else? All right, then we're going to move on to finance and facilities. Mike, do you want to give us an update?
Yeah, we met last week and we talked about the mill rate. The mill rate came in a little bit lower than what was talked about at the annual meeting. It ended up being $9.04. So that was good news. Also talked about possibility of refinancing bonds because of the various dynamics of the economy. Bond rates are changed since we started them. So we have an opportunity here to refinance, pay back some of the stuff earlier, and actually create a lot more flexibility for the school district down the road. And I think the committee supported that. That was not a committee vote, but that was supported by the committee. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions about that? All right, do we have any proposed items for future agendas? It sounds to me like the board is interested in some response on this music issue. And I think that we need to make sure that administration is weighing in on this. It could well be that there's a middle ground between 13 and 8, and we leave that to Jamie and his team to talk about. Anything else?
The issue about Thanksgiving break,
Okay.
distance learning, extra time off or normal schedule.
And that can be really incorporated into our normal.
Exactly.
Any changes on that actual day.
Yep.
Anything else?
In fact, I would think that would be informed a little by the experience we're having with Rocky right
Yeah.
now. You know, so suddenly we got to pivot and send everybody home and do virtual learning. Does that work? Would that work for a week after Thanksgiving?
Well, the thing about that is, Alan, that we would have the ability to plan. I mean, if we know for a fact that we're going to be distanced the following week after Thanksgiving, if we decided to do that, we have a week or 2 or 3 in advance to plan for it. But again, it'd be nice to know what admin thinks, but no. Yep. The week running up to Thanksgiving? Leading up to it. But I'd be more concerned about the time afterwards, though. That's where I'd be. Yeah.
That's a good point, but
That level of virtual learning is not discussed.
I think when we talk about virtual learning, it's pivoting like that, especially for elementary students, we're shifting a substantial burden to the parents.
Yeah.
It's not as much true with high school students, certainly not true with college students, but we've got to consider that.
Yep.
We can't assume that we can just turn the switch on and off here. So
true.
I'm real reluctant to do that, quite
Yeah.
frankly.
It's true.
Right. I think it needs to be challenging. So I think what you're hearing, administrators, is the board supports you having a conversation about that. We're not necessarily suggesting either way.
And I'm sorry, just the first thing you brought up, the music?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Yes. So the next thing we'll do is to set some meeting. Education program will meet Monday, November 2nd at 6. There will be a special Board of Education meeting on Monday, November 2nd at 6:30. Personnel will meet Monday, November 9th at 6. There will be another special Board of Education meeting on Monday, November 9th, starting at 6:30. Facilities and Finance will meet Monday, November 16th at 6. The next regular Board of Education meeting will be Monday, November 16th, starting at 6:30. My assumption is that we will plan to meet on Monday, November 23rd, starting at 6, as well as Monday, November 30th, starting at 6. If there's an occasion for a committee meeting, we can add that in as it gets closer, but the committees will have met already. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.